I'd like to call the meeting to order for Upper Moreland Township. Regular meeting October 7th, 2024. Our first thing, if we could have a moment of silent meditation. You stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Pat, would you take roll, please?
Ward 1.
Present.
Ward 2.
Present.
Ward 3. Here. Ward 4.
Here.
Ward 5.
Here.
Ward 6.
Here.
Ward 7.
Here.
Mr. President, all commissioners are present this evening, as is the township solicitor and township manager.
Okay, our first order of business will be our swearing in of our new police chief. And we have Judge Tom Mert will be doing that. So Pat, would you give us a bio of the new chief?
Certainly. I'd like to introduce or reintroduce Chief Scott Bendig to our residents. Chief Bendig recently retired from Montgomery Township Police Department after 35 years of service, serving the last 12 years as Chief of Police. Chief Bendig held various other ranks with the Montgomery Township, including Corporal, Sergeant, Deputy Chief. During his career, Chief Bendig has served in multiple capacities as a police officer, including patrol officer, a dare instructor, canine handler / unit supervisor, a field training officer and unit supervisor, and a criminal investigator. Chief Bendig earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in criminal justice from Temple University and his Master of Science degree in criminal justice from Westchester University. Chief Bendig has attended numerous law enforcement programs, including Penn State University's POSIT, POLEX, and Advanced POLEX courses. Chief Bendig is a graduate of the FBI's Law Enforcement Executive Development Program and the FBI National Academy Session 216. Chief Bendig currently serves on the executive board of the Chiefs of Police Association of Montgomery County.
Okay, what this board, the way how we came up with this, instead of everybody says nationwide search and all that stuff, we went back to Andy and said, because of certain situations, we're going to have to go outside. And Andy Block gave us a name to look into. And this board took it in the trust of Andy to look into Chief Bendig. And we were extremely happy to not have to spend money, to go out for the national search and do all the 50 different types that we have to do, interviews and stuff. We got, I think, extremely lucky, and I just want to thank the former trader Andy Block. So, since he went to Lower Merion. But thank you, this board thanks you. It saved us money. I believe in my whole heart that we got a good one here, so thank you. Next, Judge Mert, would you like to do the actual swearing in?
Thank you, Board of Commissioners. Commissioner McFatridge, I'm going to ask Chief Bendig to please come forward.
Yes, you may.
I, J. Scott Bendig,
I, J. Scott Bendig,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States of America
the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will uphold and obey
and that I will uphold and obey
the laws of the Commonwealth
the laws of the Commonwealth
and the laws and ordinances of Upper Moreland Township,
and the laws and ordinances of Upper Moreland Township,
I will discharge the duties of Chief of Police
I will discharge the duties of Chief of Police
with the Township of Upper Moreland
with the Township of Upper Moreland
with fidelity and integrity
with fidelity and integrity
and without consideration
and without consideration
of a person's race, color, sex,
of a person's race, color, sex,
religious creed, sexual orientation,
religious creed, sexual orientation,
age, national origin, ancestry,
age, national origin, ancestry,
handicap, or disability.
handicap, or disability.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Flo, if you would, they pin this on your,
Whatever. You can just try and find it.
Straight in?
Here. Yeah. No, it's up here. Thank you. Show them the love.
straight going in.
Show them the love. That's good, that's fine. Very good, thank you. All right, we go up there? Me or just? Okay.
You come up. All commissioners, please. Quick picture. Sound good. Grab all the officers, everybody up for a picture. The family of Chief Bendick. Okay. Oh, we're gonna be taking another picture. Next will be the police officer, Joseph Halber, and Chief Bendig. Could you take care of this?
Good evening. My first act as Chief of Police here is to introduce a new officer. Joseph Halber has been a police officer in Philadelphia since 2019. Raised in Northeast Philadelphia, Joseph attended Cardinal Doherty High School, where he played baseball and captained the soccer team. Joseph continues his academic and athletic career at Cabrini College, studying criminology, while as a soccer team captain. Additionally, Joseph interned at the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. After graduation, Joseph served with the Transportation Safety Administration at the Philadelphia International Airport for 4 years until becoming a Philadelphia police officer. Upon graduating the Philadelphia Police Academy, Joseph was assigned to the 18th District, where he served until accepting a position with the Upper Moreland Township Police Department. I'd like to ask Honorable Judge Mert to come up.
Can Officer Halber please come forward? I, Joseph J. Halber,
I, Joseph J. Halber,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States of America
the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will uphold and obey
and I will uphold and obey
the laws of the Commonwealth
the laws of the Commonwealth
and the laws and ordinances of Upper Moreland Township.
and the laws and ordinances of Upper Moreland Township.
I will discharge the duties of police officer with the Township of Upper Moreland
I will discharge the duties of police officer with the Township of Upper Moreland
with fidelity and integrity
with fidelity and integrity
and without consideration
and without consideration
of a person's race, color, sex,
of a person's race, color, sex,
religious creed, sexual orientation,
religious creed, sexual orientation,
age, national origin, ancestry,
age, national origin, ancestry,
handicap, or disability.
handicap, or disability.
Congratulations.
We'll do the family first while we're getting there. Your family first?
Constitution to Lieutenant Caliber.
Can I just take glasses? Okay, tonight, so, we have a commendation award to Lieutenant Kelly Ruddle. Whereas on June 1st, 2024, Chief of Police Andrew Block resigned as the Chief of Police for Upper Moreland Township, whereas Lieutenant Kelly Ruddle assumed responsibilities of the Chief of Police as the acting Chief of Police. Since the departure of Chief Block, while also continuing to perform her duties as lieutenant until the placement of the new Chief of Police was completed. Whereas the Board of Commissioners selected its new Chief of Police, Scott Bendig, to begin employment on September 24th, 2024. Whereas we applaud Lieutenant Ruddle's professionalism and confident that the transition will be seamless due to her hard work and efforts. Whereas we all recognize and appreciate Lieutenant Ruddle's service and dedication to the township, of the police department, and the community. Now therefore it be resolved that the Upper Moreland Township Board of Commissioners commends Lieutenant Ruddle for her professionalism, dedication, and true value to her leadership and willingness to step forward during this transition. And our board would like to say thank you so much. It's an important part of Upper Moreland Township. You've been here a long time. Thank you for filling in. It was seamless. And we got to help out Chief Bendig a little bit until they get up. Okay?
Thank you so much.
There you go. Unless you want to really be bored, yes, all the police and everyone else, we're going into just public hearings on some things, applications for here. So. Thank you, Tom. Okay, public hearing 1971. Whoop, it's a separate one, right?
Get home by 9.
That's the home. Why do I not see the waivers?
Yeah, but you want me
Waivers in the regular meeting.
Trying to get that to come up.
Page of the waivers on.
Cool enough for you?
What do you think?
We don't have any waivers.
Are you cool too?
I feel a little chill here.
I just got back on.
I just,
That new building's gonna be something else, man.
yeah. It comes,
Gets to the last page and
Thought he went out to close the door. There he goes.
gets to that circle. Trying to, thinking maybe it's Adobe, I'm trying to.
Okay, next
Wi-Fi.
on the agenda, we have a public hearing, 1971. I'll take a motion to open.
Motion open.
We have a motion, we have a second, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Would you like to take over, Alex?
All right, we're off and running. Thank you, Commissioner McFatridge. So just 10,000 foot overview. This is a conditional use hearing on the application of 2405 Maryland Road Property Owner LLC and 2425 Maryland Road Property Owner LLC. This is for conditional use approval to construct a multi-story apartment building on an adjacent lot to 2405 Maryland Road, located at 2425 Maryland Road. And this is, for reference, a completely new application as to the one that the board had entertained earlier this year. Just wanted to make that clear for the record. I'm just going to go through some administrative things here, move some exhibits of the township into the record before turning over to the applicant. So first I'll take care of the township's exhibits. I have 7 of them to enter into the record this evening. And we'll just call each of them T1 through 7. Number T1 would be a copy of the conditional use application, and that is dated August 26, 2024. Exhibit T2 will be the proofs of publication of this conditional use hearing as published in the local newspaper of record, The Intelligencer. Those advertisement dates were September 22nd, 2024 and September 29th, 2024. Exhibit T3 will be a proof of posting of the property. Exhibit T4 will be a copy of the Township Engineer Gilmore and Associates review letter. That letter is dated October 2nd, 2024. Exhibit T5 is the Township Traffic Engineer Bowman review letter. That is dated September 20th, 2024. Exhibit T6 is the Montgomery County Planning Commission's review letter for the project, and that is dated September 4th, 2024. And Exhibit T7 is the Upper Moreland Township Advisory Planning Agency minutes, and that is dated September 19th, 2024. One last matter of housekeeping. We always like to ask for party status applications at the onset of the hearing. I will explain, of course, party status for those in the audience means that you are more than just a public commenter. In this hearing, you would have the opportunity to present evidence, to cross-examine the applicant's witnesses, and or potentially participate in any appeal that stems from this conditional use decision of the Board of Commissioners once it's rendered. Generally speaking, in order to qualify for party status, you have to have a substantial interest in which there's a discernible adverse effect to you as an individual, rather than that of the general citizens of the township. And you have to have a property interest to be located with a certain zone of the property, whether it's abutting or, as the case law kind of bears out, generally within 500 feet of the property that the application is before us tonight for. Again, you will have the opportunity to make public comments on the issues toward the end of the hearing if you're not granted party status, but I will turn it over and see if anybody is applying for party status to this application this evening. Ma'am?
Hi, I live at 2405, so I would like to apply for party status just to be able to participate at that level. I was party status on the last application too.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Rosemary Doman, D-O-M-A-N.
And you're a resident of the apartment complex, correct, that adjoins? We have no issue here from the township standpoint, council.
No. Good evening, everyone. Members of the board, for the record, Andy Freemuth from Whistle Pearlstein here representing the applicants. As a resident, I don't have any objection to Ms. Doman's participation.
So moved, you granted party status. Ms. Richmond?
Sandra Richmond, I'd like to be a part.
And what is your address, Ms. Richmond?
1505 Sycamore Avenue.
And approximately, do you know how far away Sycamore Avenue is to the property?
It's approximately half a mile.
Okay, half a mile. And in your own words, can you describe what particular injury that you would have that is outside of the general interest of the residents of Upper Moreland Township?
Yes, those are roads that are very near my home, and the traffic impact has a direct impact on me, being a nearby resident.
Do you have any studies? Do you have any evidence? Do you have any photographs? Do you have any writings that would show that the traffic has impacted your property in particular? Do you have anything to present to the board which would kind of demonstrate your claims is what I'm asking?
I do not, but I'd also like to find out tonight what legitimate traffic studies have been done on this property.
And you do recognize that you would have an opportunity to ask that as a general party during
Yes.
public comment, correct?
Yes.
It is my recommendation that Ms. Richmond does not meet the standards for a intervening party to grant party status in this particular application. But again, it is the decision of the board whether to grant that party status.
And it would be up to the applicant to be able to say whether you would want to grant it or not also.
No. I would object to her standing as a party, to the extent that this board grants her party status and she participates. That participation would be a waiver of that objection. I'd be able to raise that at a later time, of course. But yeah, for the record, I'd like to note my objection, based on the questions from the township solicitor.
So on this now, it would be the 7 people on the board, right?
Correct. It is the board's decision whether to grant that party status. As you've heard, counsel for the applicant is not really agreeable to this and has preserved an objection for appeal later on if the board grants intervening status to her.
Pat, would you poll the board right across?
Ward 1, do you want to approve party status? An aye would be approved party status, a nay would be disapproved party status. A nay? Ward 2?
Nay.
Ward 3?
Nay.
Ward 4?
Nay.
Ward
Nay.
5?
Nay.
Ward 6? Ward 7?
Yes.
And I would,
Commissioner-
that is,
The count is 1 in favor, 6 nays.
and that is per the direction of our solicitor. So, but you can still make all the comments. So, okay. From here, Alex, would you just explain real quickly, or Mr. Perlmuth, either one. We already have something out there right now, a different plan than this that's in the court. And you're coming back now. Just give us an update of why we're here and what the difference is.
Sure. As you correctly point out, we were here several months ago with a conditional use application relative to these properties and the construction of a new multifamily building on 2425 Maryland Road. That conditional use application was denied by virtue of a tie vote. In response to discussions with the residents and feedback that we received at those hearings, I guess, we have made significant revisions to the plan and filed a new application, which is what's before you this evening. I do have my 3 witnesses here this evening who are prepared to explain to you our plan and those revisions. And I know it's going to take some time for the board this evening, as we know from the last time. But we do have to get through the testimony on the conditional use criteria in order to form a record. So I don't need to do anything else by way of an opening other than to say I have my 3 witnesses here. I can hand out my exhibit booklet. I believe last time we were allowed to proceed with our witnesses back to back to back in order to make it flow better for the board. And then everybody and anybody can ask questions at your direction after that. We'd be willing to proceed that way this evening if it pleases the board.
That's yours. Go ahead.
Great. I guess while I'm passing out the booklets, maybe I can have all 3 of my witnesses sworn in.
Gentlemen, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Same thing that's in here.
Noah Chrismer, Chrismer, and yes, I do.
Brian Conlon, Brian Conlon, and I do as well. Jeffrey Diramaldo, Jeffrey Diramaldo, and I do as well.
Okay. Alex, have we put this in the record, the number?
Well, he's going to go through it, and then we'll motion to move it at the tail end of the proceeding.
Yeah, we will hit every one of those items one by one, if that's okay. No, I think the commissioners know who you are, but just for the record, can you just introduce yourself again, please?
Sure. Noah Christmer, Director of Land, Planning and Entitlements at KRE Group, represent the ownership of 2405 and 2425 Maryland Road.
Okay. And as you heard me state, we were before the commissioners a few months ago with a conditional use application related to 2405 and 2425 Maryland Road for the construction of a new building on 2425 Maryland Road, correct?
Yes.
And the vote on that application of the board was a 3-3 vote, and a tie is essentially a denial of the application, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the conditional use we're seeking tonight is also for the construction of a new building on 2425 Maryland Road. Is that correct?
It is.
And that building is still to be consolidated with the existing Willow Point Apartments development?
Correct.
Okay. And now, with regard to the new application, there have been some substantial changes that have been made to the plan. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay. And can you just generally, for the board, because I think we'll see them in greater detail on some of the plans later, just describe for the board the process of the plan revisions and just generally note some of the changes that were made?
Sure. So thank you again to the board for hearing us on this new application. As Andy suggested earlier, we went through a process following the last hearing where we sat down and met with residents and representatives of residents at our apartment buildings there, and we learned quite a lot, and we heard a good amount of feedback in addition to the feedback that we heard from the commissioners, from yourselves, throughout our hearing. That caused us to relook at the plan and to make some significant changes to the plan. And Rosemary, who's here tonight, we worked with especially on that and hope that we have her support through the changes that we've made. And I'm just going to go through them briefly real quick, and I know that Brian and Jeff will show you the plans and touch on them. But primarily what we heard was that with the expansion of the project to include this additional building, the feedback, the pushback was not so much on the additional building, rather it was on the expansion of real and usable amenity space on the property for the additional building. And so we did a number of things, and I'll just sort of go through them in the order that we took them. The first, we reduced the unit count down from 55 to 53, and we took out two two-bedroom units. So we reduced it by 2 units, but 4 bedrooms. Second, what that did was that opened up space inside of the building at 2425 Maryland Road to add indoor amenity space. And as you'll see in the plans, we essentially doubled the amount of indoor amenity space at the overall Willow Point project, going from about, and I'm going to use rough terms here, but would like for our consultants will certainly give you the exact square footages, but going from about 4 to 4,500 square feet of total indoor amenity space now to about 9,000 square feet of total indoor amenity space. At the same time, we increased and roughly doubled the amount of outdoor amenity space. Again, as you'll be shown on the plans, adding outdoor amenity space in front of Building 3 at 2405 Maryland Road, and then specific outdoor space next to 2425 Maryland Road. And finally, we better integrated, as we heard from the residents, especially as we are adding amenity space indoor at 2425, we made a better connection between that building and the main building, 2405. Yes, 2405, sorry, I get confused. And so you'll see that tonight with a raised sort of speed hump, differentiated pavers, really connecting the two properties in that way. So again, Brian and Jeff will go through that in a little bit more detail, but that was what we learned from Rosemary and the residents. That's what we committed to. And then just one more thing, this isn't exactly perfectly relevant to the application, but I did want to just put on the record, we heard a number of other requests, very reasonable, from the residents and made commitments on those things. And I'd just like to go through a handful of them. Again, they're not exactly relevant here, but I want to make sure that we get them on the record. So There were a host of traffic calming measures. We've already done some expanding and filling in the speed bumps near the amenity space, but committed to building this raised speed hump, to changing the yield signs around the traffic circle to stop signs, to doing further painting to indicate the movement of travel around the traffic circle, putting in 15-mile-per-hour speed limit signs to further encourage folks to drive slowly, children here sign under the speed limit sign. We are moving a couple of the ADA spaces so that they could be more proximate to building 2 on the property, adding building signage to the property for each of the buildings to make it easier for deliveries to make their way around the property. A number of safety additions, including cameras near the front of the building and some peepholes, both for safety of people just opening doors, but also being able to see where you are. We found that. And then finally, the consideration of a play area in part of the amenity space that you'll see here tonight, which we'd further detail in land development. So those were just, Rosemary, I don't think I got them all, but there were a lot. And that was sort of an overview. So that's about it. I just want the board to know that the takeaway from our perspective was we listened, we sat down, and hopefully we've come to you with a markedly different plan that the board would see fit to approve.
Okay, before I let you go and get to the plan materials, can you just look in the exhibit booklet at what's marked as Exhibit A1 and A2? Are those copies of the recorded deeds for 2405 Maryland Road and 2425 Maryland Road?
Yes, A1 is 2405 Maryland Road, a copy of the recorded deed. And A2 is a copy of the recorded deed for 2425 Maryland Road.
Okay, and those deeds show title in the applicant entities, is that correct?
They do.
Okay, and these are the 2 properties that are a part of this conditional use application?
They are.
Okay. And then actually just one more thing. This was actually touched on at the first hearing, and before I let you sit down and get to the engineers, there was some discussion about the impact of school-age children in connection with the existing development and the proposed development. Could you just touch on that briefly for the record and reiterate what I think was discussed at the last hearing?
Sure. So this is not an actual survey, but when we sat and met with residents, we talked about this, and with our property managers and the residents, we estimate that at the school bus stop in the morning, there's somewhere between 15 and 20 students, and there may be a handful of other school-age kids that get a ride from their folks. But that the total, and please correct me if I'm wrong, plus or minus 20 to 25 school-age children, or maybe slightly younger than school-age children, at the existing 246 apartment units right now.
Okay, thank you. Brian? Brian, could you just state your name for the record, please?
Yes, good evening. Again, Brian Conlon. I'm with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services and the civil engineer on the project.
And Brian, what's marked as Exhibit A3 is your CV, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And at the last hearing, I believe Mr. Conlon was recognized as an
That's a
expert in the area of
professional,
civil
yes.
engineering.
We'll accept that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Brian, you're familiar with the conditional use application and the properties, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If we look up at the screen here, it's a little bit of a better image, but it's also A4 in the exhibit packet. This is an aerial that depicts the existing conditions of the property, correct?
Yes.
Okay, the properties, excuse me. Could you just, for the record, just point out for everyone the 2 properties involved here?
Yes. Again, two properties as part of the application. The currently built property with the 3 buildings here is 2405 Maryland Road. And to the right, plan right, which is to the east, there's an existing manufacturing building at 2425 Maryland Road that is the subject of this new application.
Great, thank you.
Better.
And then if we look again at the screen, that's what's in the booklet as Exhibit A5. Can you just describe for us what's depicted on this plan, please?
So yes, so this is, the previous one was the existing conditions, and 2405 is the same, the existing three-building site. And then on the right, the new property, we show the overlay of the proposed site plan.
And this shows a new building with 53 units as Noah described, is that
That's
correct?
correct, yes.
And that brings the total unit count between the two properties to 299, is that correct?
Correct.
And this plan is also showing one access drive, new access drive out to Maryland Road, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that will connect to the existing traffic circle?
Well, one new access to Maryland Road and an access to the existing traffic circle at 2405.
Great, and we're providing that internal connection as requested by the county and the township consultants, just like the last application, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we have noted on this plan 50 parking spaces, I guess, ground level parking spaces, is that correct?
Correct, 50 surface parking spaces around the building and 30 internal spaces within the building.
For a total of 80, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. And this plan, like the more engineered plan, concept plan we'll see in a moment, calls for the consolidation of these two parcels, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And now, one of the changes that Noah spoke about was the amenity spaces. So if you can look at this plan, can you just describe the existing outdoor amenity spaces and then show us where the proposed new outdoor amenity spaces are?
Yes, so the existing site over here, I do have the shake, so I apologize. But there's the pool and amenity area with grills, and that's for the existing facility. And then there's also internal amenity space as well that Noah mentioned during his testimony. And what we're proposing as part of the new application, which wasn't on the previous application, we're proposing a new facility here, which will be grills and like an outdoor patio area, so to speak, in front of building 3. And then as part of our new building here, we have one area, it shows two different pads there, but another outdoor amenity area for the new facility.
And these outdoor amenity areas are going to be available to all residents of the complex, correct?
That's correct, both properties.
Before we get on to the next plan, there's the dark shaded area across the main driveway. Could you just point that out for the board and tell us what that is?
Yep, that area there is, we wanted to give the connection from the new property, the new building to the existing facility. And what that represents is a speed hump or speed table, if you will, a raised crosswalk, which connects the sidewalk from the new building to the existing sidewalk at the existing facility.
And that raised feature and the crosswalk will also provide a traffic calming effect, is that correct?
Yes, it'll, in addition to the physical crosswalk itself, we'll also have signage for yield to pedestrians and things of that nature. And yes, we anticipate it's going to serve as a traffic calming device for both facilities.
Great. The next plan that's up on the screen here and in your packet is identified as A6. This is a copy of the conditional use site plan that you prepared for the application, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize, it's very difficult to read up there, but we'll try to hit it as best we can. I want you first to highlight some of the amenity spaces that we just talked about on the color plan, but they're here in more detail. So if you could use the pointer and just identify those areas again on this plan and the square footages, if you can see them, you might have to get closer to the screen.
Yeah, I might have to cheat for the square footages, but actually I'll go up. Is this okay? I'll talk loud. So again, in front of the existing building 3, we're proposing an area with outdoor grill, patio, and pergola, about 1,600 square feet. Again, this was the existing clubhouse facility where we're expanding the interior amenity space, which our architect will talk about as well. And again, that's adjacent to the pool area. And then the proposed new building, just to the southwest corner of that, again, we represent about 4,000 square feet, similar outdoor patios, barbecue grills, and pergolas.
Can you just point out, before you leave that plan, Brian, the box that shows the new indoor amenity space in the new building?
Oh, yes. To the western side of the new building, you see the dashed line here. That represents the interior amenity space that we're proposing.
Okay. And the new indoor amenity space, as well as the new outdoor amenity space near the new building, is all connected to the existing space via a sidewalk that eventually leads to the pedestrian crossing across the main driveway. Is that correct?
Yes, in fact, you can see there, the new amenity spaces outdoor do connect to the new building, and then there's a sidewalk that connects to the existing facilities.
Great. Before I dive into the specific criteria, just for the record, this plan has a series of tables and charts up at the top that demonstrate compliance with the requirements for this use in the zoning ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, and this is very similar to the previous color rendering plan. It just does have the additional information, the site criteria and dimensions, et cetera.
Okay, great. And now, starting here with the criteria, section 350-102V1, this site, once merged, will contain at least 7 acres of gross lot area, correct?
That's correct.
And there will be a single owner once these properties are merged, correct?
Yes.
And that's an agreeable condition to the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. The next criteria indicates that this area shall be adaptable to an apartment complex development. In your opinion, is this area adaptable to an apartment complex development?
Yes, especially with the existing apartment complex that's there today.
Will the proposed new building be served by public sanitary sewer and public water?
Yes.
And will the utilities be placed underground?
Yes.
Okay. And as we discussed a little bit earlier, but we are providing one secondary or emergency exit in addition to the main entrance as part of this proposal. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, and I didn't point to that, but that is in the northeast corner of the property onto Maryland Road.
Okay. And there are currently 3 curb cuts along that frontage on 2425 Maryland Road, correct?
Yes, the existing facility has 3 curb cuts to it today.
Okay. And we're taking that down to 1?
Correct.
And the township traffic engineer made a comment with respect to that access, but we are willing to agree to work with the township engineer to determine the appropriate traffic movements from that access, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Just to discuss the density for a moment, can you just tell us what the overall density is?
So we are the density, we're allowed up to 30 with some architectural elements that Jeff can certainly describe, but we're proposing, and when I said that, 30 units per acre, and we're proposing 29.7 units per acre, so we're less than the maximum that you can have.
Okay, great.
That is permitted, yes.
And a total number of 299 units, correct?
That is correct. Yes, correct, 299.
Okay. And the ordinance actually permits 18 units per gross acre unless it's increased by conditional use approval. And the increases are as follows. You are allowed to go to 25 units per acre by providing on-site community recreational and similar facilities for residents of the complex. Do we provide those facilities?
Yes.
And then you're allowed a further increase of 30 units per acre of lot area by incorporating architectural features such as dormers, patios, and enhanced materials, including Belgian block, stone, or brick. And we're providing those, correct?
Correct.
And Jeff will talk about those in more detail in a moment. Will the interior driveways have a minimum width of 24 feet?
Yes.
And they won't be offered for dedication, correct?
That's correct, private.
And do we comply with the building coverage requirements in the ordinance?
We do.
And do we comply with the impervious coverage requirements in the ordinance?
We do.
Okay. And in addition to complying with the township stormwater management ordinance, we will certainly consider any additional BMPs that the township engineer may determine are necessary in accordance with the ordinance requirements, correct?
We will, yes.
Okay. The next requirement in the code is that no building or structure shall be erected closer than 25 feet to any property line and 50 feet to any ultimate right-of-way. Do we comply with these setback requirements?
We do, yes.
And then there's a building separation requirement that says no buildings shall be located closer than 25 feet to one another at any point. Do we comply with that requirement?
Yes.
And then there's a maximum height requirement in the ordinance that's 70 feet with not more than 4 floors of residential occupancy. Does this proposed new building comply with that requirement?
Yes.
The next requirement in the code indicates that in addition to any fee in lieu of recreational amenities, Provisions for walking trails, gardens, and gathering spaces shall be made, including, if appropriate, connections to existing or future township and countywide trails. We've discussed the amenity spaces and gathering spaces, but can you just identify on this plan, and it might be clear on the color plan, but we'll start with this one, where our proposed new sidewalk is in connection with this building?
So in addition, I previously, where's my pointer out here? I previously discussed the connection internally from the new building to the existing buildings, but I didn't mention, which I'll mention now, we are also proposing new sidewalk in the frontage of the new building out to Maryland Road, and our entire frontage of the new building will have new sidewalk on Maryland Road as well.
Great. And in response to a comment from the county on this application, we also have agreed to trying to find an appropriate connection from the sidewalk along Maryland Road through the site to the amenity space, correct?
Correct.
And if you can also just point on the plan where the walking trail is located that was constructed as part of the prior project for Little Point Apartments?
Yeah, so there is a trail in the entire rear of our property in the back of the existing 2405 Maryland Road, and it kind of just ends on the eastern side right there, as you see, because that's a wooded lot. If you went back up to the existing conditions, you would see it basically cannot continue any further because it's just a wooded lot there.
But we are willing to look at potential connections through the site towards the Maryland Road sidewalk network as well, correct?
Yes, and we discussed that with the county planner as well.
Okay. And if you look up by the proposed access drive on Maryland Road where the new sidewalk and crosswalk is proposed, am I correct that directly across Maryland Road is existing sidewalk?
Yeah, just on the other side of Maryland, up and under the chart there, there's existing sidewalk, and we are providing that new sidewalk along our frontage, which lends itself to tie into that existing sidewalk to the north.
So although it would be a mid-block crossing potentially, there's an opportunity to connect over there by virtue of our new sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay. And then just on the parking requirement, does this plan comply with the parking requirements both on a per unit and per bedroom basis?
Yes, both. We meet both the requirements. The one per bedroom, we're allowed a minimum of one per bedroom, where it takes into the account the 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom units, and we are at 1.12. There's 452 bedrooms, and we're proposing 510 parking spaces, so we do comply with that. And then the other requirement, drawing a blank here, give me a second, refer to my cheat sheet. So the other one, based on the 1.5 per dwelling, and we're meeting that, we're at 1.7 per dwelling.
Okay. And there's a table which shows the parking calculations at the top of the plan.
That's correct, yes, that's on the plan in the middle there.
Okay. Is there going to be any exterior spotlighting or floodlighting of buildings or grounds that's going to be visible from off of this site?
No.
Okay. The next requirement states that the developer shall be required, where possible, to preserve or to incorporate new natural features such as trees, streams, and open space areas, which add to the overall cohesive development of the district and the overall township development. So we discussed this last time. I'm going to flip back to the existing features plan here. Can you just give us some indication as to the existing vegetation that's on this site that will be disturbed as part of the project?
Yes, so the existing building, and we don't have the property line on here, but the property line is about 20 feet off the back of that building, maybe even closer than that. So there is a little bit of vegetation in the rear of the building that will be maintained or need to be removed, the existing facility, when we take it down. But the majority of all the landscaping here between the building will remain. We will be doing a little clearing for the connection to the circle. And then in the the southeast corner of the existing building, the existing site, there is some vegetation there to be removed, but we think we have an opportunity to to keep as much as possible when we get into our land development design. But whatever we do take down, we need to replace in accordance with the township ordinances, which we will do.
And I know it's difficult because the property line's not on this plan, but would you agree that the majority of the mature vegetation that we see to the rear of this existing building is actually on the neighboring property?
Oh, yes. I mean, all of this, while it looks, there's no property line here, but the majority of this, I'd say 90% plus, is not on our property, and it will remain. We cannot touch that.
And then if we flip back to the colored plan, you can see that there is an area that we're providing along that rear property line that provides an opportunity to plant new landscaping in accordance with the township subdivision land development ordinance, correct?
Yes, this represents, you see on the rear and then on the side, and then, significantly on the frontage and on pretty much all four sides of the building, we show the new plantings that will be there. And then again, that will be supplemented as needed with anything that we remove.
And this requirement's somewhat related, but the ordinance requires a planted buffer area of not less than 10 feet in width for this property. I'm going to go back to the black and white plan here, the conditional use site plan. That buffer area is shown and dimensioned, correct?
That's correct. It's actually here is a 10 feet, and then you see on the rear property, we actually 10 minimum, but a lot of spots we actually have more than the 10 foot required.
Okay. And this plan complies with the signage requirement that appears in the ordinance?
Yes, correct.
And this development's not going to be carried out in stages, am I right?
No, this will be one phase, one stage.
Okay. And we'll see this on a plan in a moment, but we have shown on our plan fire hydrants, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And to the extent that the fire marshal provides review comments on the number and location of those hydrants, we will satisfy those comments, is that correct?
Yes, we will.
Okay. And this plan shows an area for the storage of snow on this complex in the event of a snow event, correct?
Yeah, we show that graphically on kind of the southern middle portion of the property.
And would you believe that that's an appropriate sized area for this portion of the lot?
Yes.
Given the weather we have?
Yeah, not much asphalt there that, where the snow will be coming from, so yes.
And you already talked about the sidewalk connections, and so our entire frontage will have sidewalk, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Will there be any lighting fixtures that exceed 14 feet in height near any of the walkways or within 50 feet of any abutting residential use?
Nope, then they'll be consistent with the existing 2405 development.
And we'll see foundation plans on the foundation plantings on the architectural plans, but the applicant does intend to use foundation plantings to enhance the entrance to the proposed building, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. If we turn to the conditional use procedure requirements, I just want to take you through those for a moment, Brian. They are in section 102V3A 1 through 7. I'll talk about a few of them in particular, but the plan materials that we submitted with the application, do they comply with the requirements of those sections?
Yes.
Okay. And in particular, do the plans show the location and character of the planting buffer areas and screening devices in accordance with Article 5 of the subdivision land development ordinance?
Yes, the color rendering shows that.
Okay, great. And if and when this plan or land development plan is reviewed by the township, specifically with regard to landscaping, we will have to make adjustments to the plan, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And was a traffic analysis submitted in accordance with the ordinance requirements?
Yes.
And if you turn to what's been identified as A7, is that a copy of the report that was submitted?
You confirm. That is correct, yes.
And can you briefly summarize the conclusions of that report?
Yes, so this is a traffic study or limited statement that we did for the project. And what we did with this, we analyzed the trip generations from the existing development that's there today as compared to our proposed development. And again, I mentioned earlier, the existing facility, I don't know if I said, but it's about 21,000 square feet and a little bit more than 21,000 square feet. So we analyzed that using the Institute of Transportation Engineers methodology to calculate the daily trips and then the peak morning and the peak afternoon trips. And then we compared that to our proposed development. And what that showed, so the overall daily for the existing facility was 282 trips, and the proposed facility was 241, so 41 less trips in the peak, the 24-hour day. And then for the morning peak hour, which was the most in one of the morning peaks, there was 23 for the existing facility, and our proposed is assumed to be 20, or calculated to be 20, so 3 less during the morning peak. And then finally, the evening peak, there were 16 for the existing facility, and we show 21 trips, and that would be a +5 in the afternoon peak. So -41 overall daily, -3 for the morning peak, and +5 for the PM peak. And that's trips both entrances and exits when we calculate those.
And just to be clear, that's based on 100% occupancy of the existing manufacturing building, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that building is a mid-1950s outdated industrial building, is that correct?
I don't know the exact date, but I'll take your word for it. Yes, I know it's an older building.
Okay, and it's based on your knowledge, it's approximately 1/3 occupied?
Yes, correct.
And now, have you done any kind of analysis or calculations based on a 1/3 occupancy with respect to traffic impact?
We did, actually, we looked at 1/3.
Sorry.
1/3 vacancy, so 2/3 occupancy. So we did analyze those numbers as well. And again, I mentioned the full facility was 21,000 square feet. And when you're doing these trips, it's based on the square footage of the facility. So at approximately 14,000 square feet, which is about 2/3 occupancy. So we analyzed that compared to the existing. And again, the numbers, 255 for the partially occupied building, daily trips, and 241 new for the new facility, so 14 less daily trips. The morning peak resulted in 18 for the existing and 20 for the proposed. So +2 trips for the morning peak. And then the evening peak, 10 for the 2/3 occupied existing building and 21. So where I said 5 trips more for the fully occupied building with only a 1/3 vacancy, 11 more trips in the peak hour. And just to add to that, so when we analyze that, this is not a PennDOT road. Maryland's not a state highway, but a lot of traffic is based on PennDOT criteria. And typically they look at over 100 new trips in one of those peak hours, which triggers a PennDOT study and possible improvements. So with those minimal numbers that I described, we don't think there's any negligible traffic impact. Or does that make, we don't think there's negligible traffic impact.
We think there's negligible traffic impact,
Yes.
correct?
Make sure I said that properly, yes.
Thank you. Now, there's also a code requirement that says that the plans need to comply with the fire code, correct?
Yes.
And do these plans, as far as you know, comply with the fire code?
As we have not received an official review, but as part of the plan, we did run from a site perspective, a fire truck through, which is shown on the bottom right of the plan, and we believe it meets fire access and whatnot.
Okay, and we have shown fire hydrants on the plan, which again, we'll see in a moment, correct?
Correct.
If we turn to Exhibit A8, this is a plan that shows stormwater management for the site. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And it also shows a sanitary sewer connection for the proposed site, correct?
That is correct.
And as I've mentioned twice now, but the fire hydrant locations are shown on this plan, is that correct?
We do show 2 locations, one here, and I hate to say, I noticed earlier today, we show one in the middle of a parking stall. I can assure you it will not be in the middle of a parking stall. That's a graphical mistake, but we do show 2 fire hydrants on the plan to represent locations, but of course, we'll work with the fire official on the exact locations of where they need to be.
Great. If you turn to Exhibit A9, is that a written stormwater management report that you prepared for this development?
Yes.
Can you describe the conclusions of that report for us briefly?
Yes, so we ran a stormwater analysis for the proposed conditions. We calculated the volumes necessary to be treated for both water quality and water quantity. And we represented that. It actually equated to about 7,000 cubic feet of storage, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, or excuse me, 7,500 cubic feet of storage that we would need to treat for stormwater. And we represent that on a plan with a subsurface detention. Could be an infiltration basin until we do testing and whatnot during land development. We'll find that out. But we show the stormwater management to accommodate this site development.
All right, lastly, Brian, I want to just touch upon with you the general criteria in the ordinance related to this use, which are in section 350-102V3B. Is the proposed use authorized by the ordinance, and does it meet all of the ordinance requirements?
Yes.
Do you believe that the ordinance is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood?
Yes.
Do you think that the uses of adjoining properties are adequately safeguarded from the proposed development?
Yes.
Is the proposed use generally consistent with your understanding of the Upper Moreland Township Comprehensive Plan?
It is, yes.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe that the proposed use will subject neighbors to objectionable noise or lighting or glare or any other disturbance?
I don't.
Okay. And has this project been designed to minimize the visual impact of this development on neighboring properties?
Yes.
Okay. And in your opinion, do you have any reason to believe that this use will unduly burden sanitary sewer facilities or fire or police or parks or any other services that may be provided by the township or might be provided by others?
I don't.
Okay, great. Those are all the questions I have for Brian. Jeff? Jeff, could you just state your name for the record?
Sure. Jeff Diramaldo.
And we've included a copy of your CV and exhibit in the booklet as Exhibit 810, is that correct?
Yes.
I believe
We
Jeff
will
was
accept it because we expected it
architect?
last time.
Yes, thank you. Did you prepare the architectural plan set that was submitted with the application?
Yes.
Okay. And let's go to the screen and look at what's marked in the booklet as Exhibit A11. Can you just tell us what's depicted on that plan, Jeff?
Sure. This is a street view of Building 2 from Phase 1. We're sharing this image just so that you can see the distribution of materials on the exterior of the building, the articulation of the building mass, and sort of color and texture. So, and this building is what we're modeling the new building after.
And this building satisfies the density bonus criteria in the zoning ordinance?
It does.
Okay, great. And as you noted, there's a list of the materials right on the plan, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. If we turn to what's identified as Exhibit A12, can you just tell us what's depicted on this plan, Jeff?
Sure. So you have two building elevations of the new proposed building. The front elevation facing Maryland Road and the west elevation facing the interior of the property. So the front elevation facing Maryland Road, you'll see that the material distribution is substantively similar. In fact, this is very, very much the same to Building 2, the image that we showed you previously. And then you'll see on the side elevation, which is the west elevation facing the interior, you'll see a modification to that Building 2 elevation that we modeled this building's elevation after, that shows the new amenity space addition or inclusion in the building design. Also, what you'll see there too is, make note of some of the foundation plantings that were mentioned earlier in the presentation, and that was in response to one of the comments we received earlier about adding foundation plantings to sort of improve the blank nature of the ground floor wall. And we also offered as an alternative, the project team offered as an alternative, that alternate detail in the bottom left-hand corner of the sheet that shows what we could do if the foundation plantings were deemed, insufficient. Perhaps we could use openings into the garage and use sort of climbing vines we could use openings into the garage and use climbing vines to screen the cars from view.
Great. If we look at what's been marked as Exhibit A13.
Okay, so this is the balance of the building elevations. This is the southern facing elevation facing the new parking area. and the eastern-facing elevation also facing the new parking area. Yeah, and so you'll see that, again, substantively similar to the Building 2 elevations in material treatment and architectural treatment. And you'll also see in the sort of bottom left-hand corner of the rear elevation, the southern-facing elevation, the other exposed side of the new the community amenity space.
Great. If we go to Exhibit A14, can you just tell us what's depicted on this plan, Jeff?
Sure. This is the ground floor plan, and this is where you start to see the revisions that we made here and where we included the indoor amenity space. You'll notice on the ground floor, it says 2,500 square feet, and we talked about 4,500 square feet. That's because when we go up to the next floor plan, you'll see an additional 2,000 square feet of amenity space on the floor above. So what we have here is on this amenity space on the ground floor, we have a lounge area. The leasing area is being proposed to move over into this space so that the existing amenity space in building in phase one can be expanded without the leasing space taking up space over there. We'll also have some other sort of fun things like a golf simulator. There'll be a break room for employees. We also added a maintenance shop on the right-hand side of the plan, and in that maintenance shop, we talked about providing capacity for tenant trash storage, so interim trash storage while that trash would be valeted to the dumpsters.
If we move along to Exhibit A15.
Sure, and this is the second floor plan, and this is the other half of the amenity space we would be providing here. This indoor amenity space would have some more maybe property management, maybe not less leasing function, a tenant library, and remote working, which is remote working spaces for tenants to get out of their units and be able to kind of work outside of their homes, essentially. And so just to give a little bit more opportunity to remote work.
Great. And then if we move to A16, Jeff, this is a typical floor plan,
Sure,
correct?
that's right. This would be typical of the third residential level.
Okay, great. And then A17, what does that depict?
This is the top residential level, the fourth residential level, the fifth level above grade. And this depicts the balance of the dwelling units, and these are loft units, so they have sort of a mezzanine level. You'll see that in the next slide.
Right, we'll move right to that. This is A18, the last plan in your set.
That's correct.
It's the roof mezzanine plan, correct?
Yes.
Great. And then before we conclude here, Jeff, there's certain architectural requirements in the ordinance I just want to briefly review with you. Obviously, we've submitted this plan set to the board for its consideration this evening, correct?
Yes.
And the building elevations that we've just shown have variations in the facades, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the exterior building skin is composed of the materials that you described and that are shown on the plans, and those comply with the ordinance requirements, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the dominant exterior materials do not include aluminum siding, vinyl siding, smooth face CMU, tilt-up concrete panels, glass, highly reflective mirrored materials. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I don't know if there are any ground-mounted exposed HVAC units or utility equipment, but they would be screened from view if there are any in accordance with the ordinance, correct?
That's right. If there were to be, that's what would happen. But the HVAC units for the dwelling units are package unit through wall package units. So.
Okay. And your set of plans show the new interior amenity space, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Those are all the questions that I have for the three witnesses, and we're happy to pass the microphone to whomever you'd like to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, one of them that I would, and again, this is a use hearing. I'm looking at a land development, but we have a comment on the raised walkway across from one building to the other. Our engineer says it might be a little too close to the circle. I would hope when it gets to, if it goes any farther, that would be addressed with the engineer, for that, whether maybe it's a little bit of a change in design or whatever, but that was a comment that we did get.
Yes, and absolutely, we would work with him if there's an alternative form of the crosswalk they'd like, of course.
Okay. And I know Commissioner Mullen met with some people from there, I'm not sure who, but he had called me and told me that all these new things that you were going to add to it, I want to thank a developer that listens to some people and, you know, comes back with a change in the plan from what is said in the public. So I have, any other commissioners have any comments on this? Nothing right now? Anybody from the public? Want to start on this side?
So
You have to be sworn in now?
Yep.
Right?
Do you solemnly swear that testimony about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Rosemary Doman, I'm a resident there, and I did want to thank Gary for meeting with us and listening. And it was really productive. There were a couple things, though, that are not on the plans that I just want to mention on the record. And one of them is that we had asked and talked about a retaining wall around some of the larger trees that are on the property line to be built so that during construction and post-construction, since so much hardscape is going to be now there, that they don't get washed away. So we had agreed that that was something we could do.
Agreed. We talked about tree protection on site, so we'll certainly handle that. And I would imagine that'll be like one of the plan sheets when you look at the, what's the demolition plan? But- Yeah, the soil erosion and sediment control, yes.
Okay, great. And then we definitely need a crosswalk of some kind and very safe from our property to that property. So we had looked at that. So if that does change, we'd like to just know or be a part of whatever workaround needs to happen. And also the playground isn't yet on there, but that was really important. One of the things that we just talked about today, honestly, I just sent it to Noah today, is that can we put up the picture of the overview of the property with the exits?
We'll pull up the color plan.
Yeah, that's fine. I just need to see the exits. Okay, that's good. So if you look at the exits, one of the things we asked, so I went to the bus stop today, and there were 17 children that were there getting off the bus. I don't know if there were others in the cars and, yeah, whatever, but there were 17 kids that got off that bus. So that's a lot of kids walking up and down that sidewalk. One of the things we had requested is that,
And
I'm just going to point.
you're saying up here?
That right, yeah, that's where the bus stop is.
Okay.
So that the 241 estimated traffic that is going to be leaving onto Maryland Road could potentially come onto a road that's never had access to that traffic. So we would ask that this become either a one-way or no entry either way and only be there for emergency access both ways. So I know that we just talked about it today, and that traffic, the county traffic, whoever would need to be involved in it. But I think that when you consider all these cars are parked back here, you know, they might choose to come out here and to make a left or whatever they need to do. It's just a lot of traffic to put where kids are walking and riding their bikes and doing a lot of stuff. And if you don't know that this traffic is an issue, while we were standing here, 7 or 8 of us, 2 cars came around this the wrong way, even though we were standing in the road. So you can't really rely on drivers to do the right thing. So the other thing that wasn't on here yet is that there is no, we talked about the connection of the walkway, but there is no crosswalk. This is not pavement actually on the ground, so that's not real. But to the dog run, which is on the back, or the path that would potentially be considered new. So we definitely need a crosswalk to this back section that's getting used. And we talked about adding stop signs to there, but also the intersections where more traffic might be that is actually going to be capable of handling the runoff. So that, because if it doesn't handle it there, it's going to run over here. So just those couple points to put on the record. And I know we talked about it when you guys were working on them, but I really appreciate it. So, and I appreciate the participation of the board in coming out. That was great. That's all I have for now.
Good, okay, thank you. Well, while you said that, just a question to the engineer. This parking lot here, you're going to put underground storage. Is that going to be pervious paving, or is it still going to be inlets?
We're going to analyze it. Again, if there's perk, things like that, we'll certainly look to do as much green technology as we can.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the public? This side.
Okay, before we get to public comments, I just want to jump in on behalf of the township. This is a question directed to counsel for the applicant. In the previous application, there were 2 conditions that were proposed, and I just kind of wanted to state them back on the record to see if applicant was still amenable to them. The first was the consolidation of the 2 parcels prior to the filing of the land development application, which was agreed to previously. And the second was providing a connection to the access to the trail on Maryland Road.
Yeah, I think the consolidation issue is fine. We're going to consolidate these, but I don't think we had a chance to discuss the procedural issue with that. I guess I would just say we would include a plan sheet in a plan set that requires the consolidation, and we might have to record that separately, because I think if they get consolidated beforehand and then the plan's not approved, there could be issues there. So
Right.
We're going to consolidate them, and I think we can figure out the appropriate procedure to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least it's on record.
Yep.
Okay.
And, sorry, just to address the second one, the connection to the trail system, I think also is sort of part and parcel what Rosemary was talking about in terms of a couple of the crosswalk areas, connecting the existing sidewalk system back down to the trail. So we're also amenable to that, obviously.
Thank you. Now,
Public comments.
public comment. Good.
Okay, first I want to acknowledge that the amenities have been improved, and I appreciate that very much. And it was a good start. Start is the operative word here. First, the size of this property is 1.616 acres, or thereabouts. Is that correct?
1.7 acres rounded up, yes.
Yes. Okay, and the requirement in this township for conditional use properties is 7 acres, right? So I want to establish that this property did not, in the earlier hearings, and does not now qualify for apartments. So I have some questions. Can you show where the stop signs are on this plan and other signs for pedestrians?
I just access the laptop, please.
So, pedestrian crossing sign before you enter the circle and going north, and another one here, if you can see that symbol. That's going south before you're hitting the circle. And I believe, I don't know if it's not shown, but there will be a stop control leaving the new entrance to Maryland Road as well.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm just going to supplement that answer, just if that's okay. Based, as I said on the record earlier, based on conversations with Rosemary and folks at the property, there are also, on the existing conditions plan, a couple yield signs around the traffic circle, which we're going to recommend in our land development to be turned into stop signs as well. So there's the signage that Brian has pointed out, and then there's the signage that we've made commitments to, changing yields to stops. And in addition, on the main access road is where we'd be proposing to put the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, and the children, you know, sort of children are here signage as well. So there's a little bit of signage that has come as a result of meeting with the community residents that's not shown on the plan from the application that we've committed to and that we'd like to put on the record.
Okay. So it was mentioned that the appropriate traffic movements have not been developed as of yet. How can we assess the safety of this property if those assessments and the plans have not been submitted?
I guess I could say that this is a full movement access proposed at the moment, and we received a comment from the township traffic engineer with respect to that access. So we're willing to discuss with the township traffic engineer what appropriate restrictions might be for this access, but right now it's proposed as full movement, and we're willing to work with the township's engineer to figure out whether that needs to change in some manner. And it's been assessed based on full movement.
I'm also concerned about the raised pedestrian crosswalk, and in order for us to know whether this plan is safe, we need to know where that crosswalk will go at the time of submission. It's not appropriate to say we'll move it later if we can figure out where to put it else, where else we can put it, because we cannot assess the safety. As of now, it's been raised as a safety issue. So that is a major concern of mine. It's sitting there. I agree with the concept of it, but we don't know how it can be made safe at the time of application.
That'll come back when land development starts. Right now, it's a recommendation. It's not against the law, not against anything. They just want to have a talk with them about the height and certain things with it.
Right, it's not against the law to have a pedestrian crosswalk, I agree with that, but we are concerned about safety, and in considering the application, we need to have a reasonable assurance in the plans that the plans meet safety requirements. And as of now, with that pedestrian crosswalk right at the circle, it is not safe. And I know you're big on safety, so I'm bringing that up.
I want to make a comment. The reason for the raised crosswalk near the circle, I was at the facility, cars were zooming through, so it will help them slow down and come down so they're not zooming through the circle or not following the flow of direction. Granted, it's just there for designation purposes, but they did talk about potentially moving it further back, depending on when they talk to the engineer.
Right, and to be clear, I agree with traffic calming measures, and I agree with the concept of a crosswalk, but where it is now is dangerous, and if you're reviewing the application, if the application meets the requirements for the conditional use now, you can assess that because the crosswalk has been deemed not safe. So, and that's my point. My point is not to object to the crosswalk, because I'm not. What is the percentage of impervious surface?
65.
And does that include all the new sidewalks?
Yeah, the current plan, yes.
Including the proposed sidewalks that we've talked about tonight, such as the connection to trails?
Yes.
That was figured in?
Whatever's on the plan is what's...
Right, and where's the sidewalk that is going to be potentially connected to trails? It's not in the plan. But it's a potential condition, is that correct?
We need to comply with 65%.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if that is a condition tonight, then the plans will be revised to bring the impervious surface into compliance.
We have to, yes.
I would say if we exceed the impervious coverage, we need to go to your zoning hearing board.
Yeah.
Okay. Fire hydrants. Am I correct in understanding that the fire marshal has not reviewed the plans and provided their input?
I do not think he has. It's usually land development when he'll go through it.
So how do we know that what is in the plan is adequate and safe tonight?
That is the process that this takes. All we're looking at, is it a usable area for an apartment? That's the only thing we're looking at tonight.
Okay. I'd like a point of legal clarification then. In the hearing for conditional use, is it appropriate to discuss compliance with elements of the conditional use ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. And so if fire safety is in the conditional use ordinance, specifically mentioned, then it is appropriate to discuss and consider tonight.
Of course. It's also appropriate and considerate to talk about a conceptual plan that has to be completed in land development.
Except that if it's specifically named in the ordinance, then
You just said discussed. We are discussing
Right.
it. They have
There's a
discussed with them.
consideration of a criteria that makes up the whole as to whether this use is an appropriate use under the law.
okay. And
Again, just like the plans, the fire issues, of course, are relevant, but they do not have to be set in stone until the land development and the other ordinances in the subdivision land development ordinance put specific requirements in place for approval.
And you're saying that also goes for stormwater management?
Yes.
Very interesting.
If I could just interject really briefly, we did testify that there were fire hydrants shown on the plan, and that a fire truck turning template has been provided. And if you need testimony with respect to how the building will be sprinklered, I just asked Jeff to really touch on that very briefly. Sure. Just very, very briefly.
Come up to the microphone, yeah.
Right, so the building will have to comply with the PA-UCC, so the International Building Code that forms the basis of the Pennsylvania Building Code, and in that we're required to meet certain fire protection requirements for the construction of the walls, floors, and roofs, and also to provide sprinkler systems for the building. So the sprinkler system, the building will be sprinklered per the requirements of the building code, and the structure will be fire protected, passively fire protected, with 1 hour rated construction for the 4 floors of residential and 3 hour rated construction for the podium level, which forms the parking level.
Okay. And have turning templates been provided for trash trucks, emergency vehicles, et cetera?
They have the condition, they have agreed to combine it. So that's it.
No, just the fire circulation.
Yeah, they couldn't do it without that condition.
Okay. I have one final concern, and that is about the natural environment and this disturbance, which is, when we say disturbance, we mean removing the trees. And I have not seen a plan for replacing them. I've seen a plan for I've heard about plans for further discussions, but I haven't seen any plans or heard of any plans for preserving or adding to the natural environment. And that is a concern of mine.
Again, I'd like to point out that there are very specific standards in the subdivision and land development ordinance that require preservation of trees and replacements and planting of vegetation. So again, the applicant is allowed to show a theoretical concept, but does not have to have those specific requirements of that ordinance completed at this time.
I see. Okay. My comments revolve around being able to assess this plan and whether this plan is going to meet safety requirements, whether it's in line with the ordinance, whether it's in line with our 2040 plan. And I'm not opposed to appropriate development, but I do want us to ensure that what the applications are meeting the requirements, in this case, of the ordinance. And I do not see where this plan meets those requirements in the areas that I mentioned. And I would say that they've effectively eliminated me as a party status, but I'm counting on you to look at this plan and assess whether it actually does or does not meet the requirements of the conditional use ordinance. And the first pillar in that is, does this property even qualify for conditional use apartments? And the answer is no, it does not. So I'm asking you to please consider these comments that I'm making, because the items that I brought up are in the ordinance, and the application needs to meet the requirements in the ordinance now, not in land development, because we can assess whether it does or does not meet those requirements right now.
When you say it doesn't meet the requirements, are you referring to your first comment when you said that it doesn't meet the like the acreage requirement?
Right, I'm saying that. And in the case of the stormwater management plan, when an item is specifically mentioned in the ordinance, when it's specifically, there's a line specifically mentioning that requirement, then an application needs to meet the requirement up front, not down the line. It needs to demonstrate compliance to that requirement in the application process.
So I think I can speak to the first requirement about the acreage. Because the parcels are combined, it does meet the requirement, Alex, is that
Correct.
my understanding?
Correct, they're the owner of both parcels. Now, there is a technical process in which you have to go to the Recorder of Deeds and file a consolidation plan to make those two lots one, right? But we are, again, just looking at the use, right? So we're talking about in the theoretical situation in which they consolidate the lots, which is just an administrative function because they own both. Would this plan comply with all the other terms and conditions that you guys have in your ordinance? And we're of the opinion that yes, of course, if they consolidate the lots, then the acreage is not an issue. If they never consolidate the lots, then the conditional use is invalid and they cannot move on to land development to construct their project.
Right. And there is absolutely nothing requiring you to combine the lots. That's a choice that you would make in order to allow for these apartments to be built. And I'm saying you do not have to make that choice. That is a choice. It's not a requirement.
Okay?
Okay. Something else I'd like to correct the record. Was 2425 ever approved for conditional use apartments? 2425 Maryland Road.
In which instance, ma'am?
In 2015, 2017.
Yeah, they got conditional use approval.
The original, the original conditional use that led to.
No, they did not own it, so
I don't.
they only owned it
Right.
for the last couple of
Okay.
years.
And I say that because it's in the documents tonight that this property was approved in 2015 and 2017 and denied in 2024, and that is not correct.
That must be. I think the narrative says that the original project was approved at that time. There's no indication that 24, 25 was part of that approval.
It's right in here. It's in the first page of your application.
Yeah, I don't know the exact wording, but they were alluding to the existing property getting conditional use approval.
There may, I'm just thinking, there may be a box on your form application that asks if this property was ever part of a prior approval. And I think truthfully the answer to that is yes, because we're talking about two properties to be consolidated. So I'd have to mention the prior approval in the application.
This property is not consolidated, though it is a separate property. Okay, so here it is, right here.
So your application says, has previous conditional use application been filed on this property? Yes, which I think is a truthful statement. And it says, if yes, give the date and disposition of previous application. 2 previous conditional uses are referenced with respect to township resolution numbers, and then the denial from July 1st that is mentioned. So I think that that's accurate.
It is not accurate. And I think that it's important to have the record straight.
It's accurate as far as-
2425 has never been approved for conditional use. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay, so why does the application say it was?
I think the application says what I just agreed to.
I'd like the record to show that 2425 has never previously been approved for conditional use.
It's on record that you have objected to that.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
I don't have any questions. This is your opportunity, ma'am, to speak. Do you have any more?
You just looked like you had a question. All right, that's all I have to say. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Does anybody else in the public have anything on this? Okay. The board has asked their questions.
I still have a few. I didn't get to mine. I wasn't ready, sorry. Just a few. Thank you for all your efforts to get to this plan. So I saw in the minutes of the APA, you had agreed to some of the Montgomery County Planning Commission recommendations. Can you just give us some detail of that?
Yes, I can start, and perhaps these gentlemen recall some other points from that evening. But I believe there was one comment with respect to adjusting ADA ramps in the crosswalk at the proposed new access drive to make that align better, which is something that we'll of course do. Up in that area there.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course, when it's fully engineered, we'll be able to get those details on the plan. I believe the comment from the county with respect to a connection through the site, which we have already talked about this evening, was reiterated, and that's something that we're willing to do by virtue of some crosswalks or other acceptable means of making that connection.
Yeah, that can point to a little more. I think that the connection was proposed sort of from Maryland Road here down around the building. We talked with the county and the planning commission about the redundancy of this sidewalk here, and for impervious coverage purposes, maybe eliminating that sidewalk, and instead of having a redundant sidewalk here, adding the sidewalk connection there, roughly the same length, and so the same impervious coverage.
Okay, thank you.
I think those were all of
Okay,
them.
okay. Another thing, Alex, maybe you can help me with this, but wasn't there some discussion on the first application about the lofts and whether they can be used as a bedroom?
We can testify to that. They cannot, we do not allow folks to use them as a bedroom. They don't have doors, nor do they have a full height wall.
Okay,
It's like a knee wall with
sounds
no
like-
door.
okay.
People use it for a workspace.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
No bathroom associated with it.
There's, oh, no, but, okay, thank you. And then the only other thing, as you noted, working on these connections to the trails is a condition of the conditional use approval. So I just wanted to, first of all, the back of the property where I think you've had discussions with the county on the cross-county trail. What is the county's request right now related to that?
I think that the county's request is to try and find a way to make a connection to the existing piece through the site out to Maryland Road. I don't know what I'm sure that their plans are still to go on either side, but that's just speculation. But in terms of our specific situation, they realize that we don't own the property on either side, and we've built our full connection there. But they'd like us to try to find a way through the site to get to the sidewalk we're constructing along Maryland Road.
Yeah, so I guess I'd like that to be definitive, that there will be that connection.
Yeah, I think we've committed to that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then the other trail is the power line trail, which, are you aware that the township's working on making that connection? We do have a grant for the construction of it, but we're on hold for the cost of the design. So where will that cross, Pat?
That crosses, I guess it would be east of this. Yeah, probably a little further right
Yes,
than that.
you're-
It's,
Okay.
yeah, I guess that's the hotel in the top right corner. Is that the hotel right there? I think so. So the, yeah, that's the hotel, and I think that the power line trail would be right here.
Just for the record, we're referring to the color plan, although I've forgotten the number, but maybe Alex will note it down. The color plan, A5? A5. Go, I'm sorry.
Sure. So the township has applied for funding to construct a trail underneath the Pico power line, which is somewhere in the top right corner of this plan as we're looking at it. And that will go from Maryland Road through the Pico line back to Maryland Road and continue then out to Blair Mill Road. So it connects near Jamestown Village. I don't know what probably a couple hundred feet away from this proposal.
Okay, so that will certainly be an amenity for Willow Point.
Yes.
But right now, there won't be access from Willow Point. There's not, the sidewalk doesn't continue, does it?
No, right now, it's just proposed along the frontage here. Yes, and then it stops at our neighboring property. But as you can see, it does line up with existing sidewalk across Maryland. To the extent that there's some type of connection that could be made there, as I mentioned earlier, it is mid-block, but there is a connection there. I guess it's all dependent on what happens with the neighbor.
Would you say it's been blocked?
It's a mid-block crossing.
Oh, it's a mid-block.
Some people
Got you.
don't like those, but it's the middle of the block, yeah. It's not at an intersection. But we are providing sidewalk.
Well, the other crosswalk is not at, the proposed currently is not at a crosswalk either, right? We're planning to cross the power line trail. That's mid-block too.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And I do believe, I'll just state for the record, I believe the county is looking at the cross-county trail coming on the turnpike side of the property and then continuing to the and forgive me, I don't recall who owns that, but I think the county's plan is to continue along near the turnpike and then behind Jamestown Village out to 611. That's the latest plan that I had seen.
So they're still trying to go along the back of their property?
The last that I have seen, yes. And then they will do a spur from the turnpike area near Jamestown Village to Maryland Road, where we will then pick it up with our trail from Maryland to Blair Mill.
Okay. So I guess there will be more discussions on this for land development, but that is definitely something we will be looking at. Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Your closing comment? Anything you'd like to add?
Just very briefly, there's been a lot of discussion about the conditional use criteria, of course, and the level of detail that's in your ordinance. And I think we've demonstrated compliance with all of the criteria, contrary to some folks' opinions. And of course, this is really, truly the beginning of the process when it comes to land development generally. We are talking about the use, and then we have to go to engineering. But we have provided a significant amount of detail in this submission for your consideration because that's what your ordinance requires. And we think we've satisfied all of those criteria. And as a result, we think that this use should be permitted by the ordinance. And we don't think that any of the comments rise to the level of harm that's required to essentially deny the use, which is ultimately a permitted use. So I'd just like to thank you all for your time here this evening, your service, and for listening to this application this evening. So thank you.
Okay.
Last thing, Counselor, you want to move your exhibits formally into the record?
Would like my exhibits to be admitted into the record. Thank you.
So moved. Motion to close?
Okay, I'm going to make one comment before I take the motion. I misspoke. Commissioner Mullen just told me, if the crosswalk, it just says the applicant considered, if they would consider removing a speed table just because it's close to, they didn't say it was unsafe, with any other decorative or any other, only for the pedestrian crossing. They did not say it was unsafe. I said that. Just, I want to clarify the record. With that, I'll take a motion to close public hearing 1971.
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved. Next public hearing is 1972, ordinance 1756. Do I have a motion to open?
Motion to open.
Okay, we have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved. Alex, if you would handle this one from here.
Okay, thank you. So as we are into our second hearing, right, we have got a zoning ordinance amendment. I will put the giant caveat up front on the record, right, that this proposed ordinance regulating smoke shop uses in the township is entirely contingent upon further down the agenda this evening, the comprehensive zoning update being approved and passed into law by you as the board. We just had dovetailed this because this was being worked on before the CDC and with myself and staff over the summer, and we just wanted to present this to you because it is ripe for that. So this would amend your new zoning ordinance to include these regulations as well. Again, it's contingent, of course, upon that zoning ordinance being passed this evening. So if not, then this would just be tabled until action is taken on that particular ordinance. This one's pretty straightforward. I will just move the township application. Well, I guess there's only really one exhibit to move in, and that is the proof of publication of this zoning hearing that was published in the Intelligencer. We'll just call it T1 to be clean. And that notice of this public hearing to receive comments on the proposed ordinance ran on September 22nd, 2024 and September 29th, 2024. Of course, ordinance has been in the agenda packet. It's been before the CDC on multiple occasions and discussed. The substance of it, of course, amends the zoning ordinance to essentially define what a convenience store is, define what a smoke shop is, and in a nutshell, essentially, that is anything that involves the sale of tobacco, tobacco paraphernalia, THC products, kratom, ingestible CBD products, or electronic nicotine delivery systems in any form or fashion. And what this does essentially is just put it in the zoning code and regulates the zoning districts in which it can be operated in and used, and sets certain setbacks from other significant properties and or uses in the township that are considered a public health and safety issue, such as residential zone districts, such as institutional districts, such as churches and schools. But that is essentially the ordinance, and the purpose of this hearing, of course, is to receive public comments on the ordinance. So I will turn it over to the public. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to make on the record about this? Okay, hearing none. Commissioner comments?
It just came up very last minute. I brought this up just because you see the word THC in here, which is a controlled substance. We don't let alcohol and certain other uses next to schools, nurseries, and stuff like that. And that's what made me think of this, is if the state passes, let's say recreational marijuana and stuff, it could be sold here because of the THC ingredients and stuff. So with their right now, you have the same things in here that we take care of, that they have to prove when they go to get a medical marijuana one. So that's what this is, basically this same thing. So, and a couple other townships have just gone to this. We kind of took their model and Alex adapted it to our township. So that's where this came from. With no other
I just have one. Can you just speak to the county's concern about separation of the same uses?
Sure. So, the MCPC, or the county, they did issue their review letter as standard because this is zoning amendments. Their main concern was necessarily including this in the zoning ordinance versus including it in your regular general code of ordinances. Really what it came down to was a matter of choice. There's no wrong way. The county's not wrong, we're not wrong for putting it in the zoning, and they're recommending it be taken outside of it. I think what their concern mostly was, from that regard, was that you would have, I guess, more control in theory in the general code of ordinances to amend this ordinance on the fly, right? So if you saw that the setback distances, which for instance, right now, a significant tobacco retailer, as they're defined, has to be 1,000 feet away from a school, right? If you found that was unfeasible or untenable, then you could simply just amend your ordinance a lot faster in response without having to go through the review process. In consulting with staff, we decided that the zoning ordinance was probably the better route to go here, simply because the zoning ordinance provides a clean administrative remedy path, whereas your code of ordinances would make us create like a new administrative function. So if somebody came in with an application for a conditional use or a use by right for one of these places, and they went through your process and somehow the board denied it, then what do we do with an appeal, right? We'd have to create our own kind of appellate process, or maybe the code enforcement director is the first person that reviews it and renders a decision, and then that appeal can go to you as the board, and then because we have to provide some kind of administrative hearing under the law, and then what do you do with it if they want to take it into the court of common pleas? And quite frankly, most judges know the zoning process. They have no idea when appeals come in on other code of ordinance decisions, because they just don't know administratively. Can they look at it substantively, or are they just there looking for errors? There's different legal standards that they have to apply. So we just figured keep it in zoning. If there's an issue with somebody that has a setback or they need relief for it with one of the provisions, then they can file for a variance to the zoning hearing board. The zoning hearing board's a neutral body that can decide that. And then there's a clean route of appeal that automatically they can take to the court of common pleas. I know that's long-winded, but that's where we were thinking as to why we should keep it in the zoning ordinance versus the county's comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else on the board? Okay, with that, should I have a motion to close this hearing?
Motion.
We have a motion to a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved? Okay, next we'll go to public comments, non-agenda items only. Okay, treasurer's activity report.
I make a motion to approve the treasurer's activity report.
Second? Second. Okay, any discussion? Public discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved? Approval of the
I
meeting
make a
minutes?
motion to approve the meeting minutes from September 9th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion from the board? Any corrections? Anything from the public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved. We go to committee recommendations. Community Development Committee would like to make a motion to approve the ordinance number 1754, amending Part 2, General Legislation, Chapter 350, zoning of the Upper Moreland Township Code of Ordinance, and the Upper Moreland Township zoning map. The second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion from the board? The one thing I will say, this is making us compliant. It's been going for 4 to 5 years. This is an element that was changed, all kinds of things in zoning in the township. This does not mean that if we have something in this ordinance that doesn't work in the next couple years, that it can't go back, but it takes close to a year for most of these things to go through, because it comes to us, then it goes to committee, then it goes to the county, goes through several different steps before it gets back to us. So if we do want to change something, we can do it. It's just not as quick as we would like it to be. So, but I just want everybody aware, this can be changed. Any other discussion from the board?
No.
Anybody from the general public? Okay, all in favor to approve the ordinance number 1754? Say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved. Next, the committee would like to make a motion to approve ordinance 1756, amending Part 2, General Legislation, Chapter 350, zoning, the Upper Moreland Township Code ordinance for smoke shops within the township.
Second.
We got a motion, we have a second. This is what we had just talked about. Is there any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the public? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved. The next thing, we have a land development subdivision application. There is the committee would like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-21, granting approval of the property at 2005 Pioneer Road to subdivide the existing parcel into 4 conforming lots in order to construct 4 single-family dwellings.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion on these items? Okay, in this, there will be, wait a minute. We have waiver requests in here. My computer's shutting down.
Is your cord?
Do you want to? I can just read it off of yours real quick.
Oh, whichever.
Okay. Real quickly, I would, if anybody's not in favor of doing them all in one thing, so I'll make a motion to all the waivers. Section 300-15B for the streets requiring a widening to 20 feet. Everything is already curbed, so that's why I didn't think, or anybody else in the committee, we didn't have to do that. And it would only be for one property. Section 300-18A, sidewalks partial waiver to not require the sidewalk for the entire property frontage of Pioneer Road. The reason is from the driveway to the turnpike, we would have to dump them out onto oncoming traffic because of the abutment to the turnpike. There is no way to get underneath the turnpike bridge, so you'd be dumping them right into the street at the end. They will be doing a sidewalk in the opposite direction. Next is 300-52, drafting standards, all existing features in 400 feet. We have the elevation of the properties and stuff next to it. They've submitted, but section 300-55, plan process procedures to permit a plan to approve a preliminary final. The last one is section 330-43, planning requirement, partial waiver to restrict interpretation of planning requirements, strict interpretation of the township landscape ordinance is not practical or feasible based on the existing vegetation of the turnpike and fences. The reason is the turnpike on that side of the property 4 is probably a 30-foot drop from the, almost straight down from the turnpike. And there is already vegetation there, mostly all small stuff because it's such a severe slope. So that is the motion for all the waivers. Is everybody in agreement with it, or would somebody rather break them out individually and vote on them individually?
No.
Okay. Any questions from the public on this?
We discussed this thoroughly in committee.
Yes. Any discussion from the public on this? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved. Next, we have a motion to approve Resolution 2024-22, granting approval of the property owner at 4325 Shoemaker Road to consolidate 2 parcels on the property into 1 parcel. On here, again, extensively in our committee, the reason for it, wanted to put a garage up, and he has 2 properties and it encroached onto the one a very little bit, so he's just going to merge the 2. That's the motion. And then before that, we have waivers on this one.
And I hate to be a nuisance, Commissioner McFatridge, but I would recommend that we do the waivers individually on this one for the reason that there's a suggested denial of the second waiver, which is under letter B. That's the waiver request from the installation of the sidewalks.
Okay. Battery went dead, so I'm up and right. Thanks, Cheryl. Which one are we on? 2024 dash.
Do you want me to read the first waiver request? You got it.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, did we get a motion and a second on this?
We have a motion.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we can
Second.
call for the second. Okay. We have a second. We can't go any farther until we go through the
Waivers.
Okay. First thing is 300-15B. Residential streets shall be those that are used strictly to serve residential areas, do not serve through the streets in a development, or do not serve a through street to a development. They shall be a minimum of 50 feet and shall have minimum paved width of 30 feet. Constructed in the street, curbing, sidewalks shall be in accordance with the standard. With that, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. The owner would like to have the waiver because every other house on the street is, you'd only be widening it for one property. Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Marty Eustace with Eustace Engineering. I'm just ready for this next waiver.
Okay.
Because I believe it was
All right. Any public comment on this? Any commissioner comment? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wait a minute, I want clarification. We decided to defer that unless other properties do some construction, then they would do the sidewalk, right?
Yeah, we're not on the sidewalk yet.
Oh, not the sidewalk.
We're on the
Okay, sorry.
width of the road.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
Okay. And that's because it is over a quarter mile or whatever, and it'd be one little section. All in favor, say aye.
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 Against, abstain, that motion passes. 300-18A, sidewalks shall be provided along all streets excepting where, in the opinion of the board, they are unnecessary for the public safety and convenience. A waiver is requested to not provide sidewalks along the east side of Shoemaker since no major improvements are proposed at this time and no sidewalks exist north side of the site.
Second.
You're here for?
Well, just in case I heard it was potentially denied, our client has agreed to install the sidewalk at the time that is necessary. I believe the township would give 90 days to do so. If sidewalk were to be installed along that stretch by his neighbors.
Right, so, I mean, the technical request is to waive installation of all the sidewalks, right? So you're denying it with, as you'll see in the bold font, right, the condition that the applicant has agreed to place on the plan, which the installation will be deferred. At that time, myself and Jim Hirsch at Gilmore have reviewed the language of the proposed condition. We saw the proposed plan, we're fine with it. But on the technical sense, you're denying it because they're requesting, to waive sidewalk installation altogether.
Okay, so with this, you're saying the township, the same as a parking waiver, it's at our discretion when we say to put it in. Okay, and one of the reasons is you'd have to take the trees down along the street, I think is what he said.
Correct, that's part of it.
You'd lose a lot of the trees.
Right, so when the township decides that they are necessary, then the applicant would have 90 days to comply and put in sidewalks.
And that additional information would be in the note?
It's recorded, it will be on the recorded plan. We've reviewed the note of the proposed plan. We're comfortable with it.
That note has been added to the plan, note 18.
Including when the township says within the 90 days they have to do it? Okay. Yeah, I get that because there's not other ones. It's just, this is such an important link and sidewalk link, and my concern is nobody's going to remember that, but on the other hand, I don't think there's any plan right now or expectation that we'll get sidewalks on each side of that house, so.
Right. And to your point,
That's
Commissioner
fine.
Walker, that's why, if somebody pulls the records 10 years from now, they'll see a denial, like, oh, they have to install the sidewalks, and then when they refer to the recorded plan at the county, there is this note 18 that would say.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure what would make them pull this exact record.
I mean, we would,
If we're to-
right? If the
You would think to, okay.
Paul's office would look at it too. I mean, he's gonna have that on his internal files as well that says that there's a condition that requires them, so.
Okay, thank you. So we should vote to deny this?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay, anybody from the public? Okay, so we are not granting this, we are denying this. The things that we just
Technically,
stated.
because they've asked for a complete waiver of all sidewalks.
All in favor, say aye. Okay. Against? Nay?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. Abstain? Okay, denied. Okay, number 300-43A, street trees shall be planted from 1 foot to 8 feet outside the ultimate right-of-way and no closer than 3 feet to any public sidewalk. The owner is requesting a waiver to credit the existing trees located further than 8 feet from the right-of-way along the property frontage towards the required number of the street trees.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on this from the board?
No.
From the public? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved. We have section 300-50B, the preliminary plan is required for all subdivision and land development proposed within the township. Waiver is requesting to submit a preliminary final plan for this. Any discussion from the board?
Second.
Oh, second, thank you. Any discussion from the board? The public? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved. Okay, 300-52C, within 400 feet, any part of the land being subdivided shall show the location, names, width, radii, and surface conditions of existing roads, alleyways, and proposed roads delineated on the township right-of-way map, as well as the location of water courses, flood-prone areas, wetlands, steep slopes, sanitary sewers that have a significant impact on the ability for the applicant to subdivide the land and question of the areas. A waiver is requested to not provide all of this within 400 feet. We have an aerial of it, and it was discussed, and since we have that, it shows those things on that.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Did I ask for public comment? Any public comment? Yes. Oh, I think, no, okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved. The last thing is 300-52C, the plan shall show the location and character of existing buildings, the location, species, and size of trees standing alone, the trees greater than 4 inches in diameter to be measured a distance of 3 feet from grade, the outer limits of tree masses, the location of quarries, marshland, land subject to inundation, and the other topical features that may affect the location of proposed roads, buildings. So they're asking for a waiver to request not to have to do the standalone trees on the entire property since we're doing it, because the one thing is nothing is being built, no new roads or anything like that. The building that's going there is not impacting trees.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Okay, any public comment? Commissioner comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved. Now we would go back to the original motion. Okay, 2024-22, granting the approval of 4325 Shoemaker Road to consolidate these.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Any discussion from the public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? So moved, approved. Okay, Public Health and Safety Committee meeting.
Yeah, the Public Health and Safety Committee has no business to be brought before the board tonight.
There's a couple things we skipped over.
What?
Walmart
Number 3.
Walmart. Walmart.
Walmart trailers.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Tara.
You did say Public Health and Safety.
You did.
I did, I checked the other one by mistake. Okay,
Zoning
motion to approve Resolution 2024-23, granting approval of Walmart located in 2101 Blair Mill Road for the placement of 18 portable storage units for the storage of their holiday inventory from October 7th through December 31st, 2024. This, they have come in every year. The fire marshal goes over this to make sure they're placed where they should be, and this is a temporary thing for storage for them. It was discussed in the committee.
I second the motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved. You can say it again, Charles, now, public health and safety.
Hey, thank you. The Public Health and Safety has no business to be brought before the board tonight. Thank you.
All right, Finance and Administrative Committee.
Okay. The committee makes a motion to approve the reappointment of Douglas Horn on the Uniform Construction Code Local Appeal Board to serve a new 5-year term that will expire on August 5th, 2029.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, approved.
Okay, the committee recommends approval of the following checks, beginning with check number 142223, ending in, these are general fund checks, ending in check number 142452. Also, escrow fund checks beginning with 9827 and ending with 9827, and liquid fuel fund checks beginning with 3151 and ending with 3157. Is there a second?
We have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions on the motion from the public? From up here? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved.
The committee makes a motion to approve Resolution R 2024-24, granting approval to submit a local share account grant application to assist with the cost of the municipal complex renovations.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a
We
second.
discussed this in detail at committee. Do you want to add anything, Pat?
No, it would be a new application for an LSA grant that would be applied for. I believe the deadline is sometime in November. The resolution is just one of the requirements for the application.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the general public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved.
Next, the committee makes a motion to approve and ratify the union contracts between Upper Moreland Township and the Police Benevolent Association, Blue Collar and White Collar. An agreement's been reached to extend the contract with the 3 unions for 2 years on the same terms except salary increases. I think it's a positive outcome for all and appreciate the earnest negotiations by everyone.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? And from anybody from the public? Pat, I would like to say thank you for this. Pat worked very hard on this with John and with our staff all the way around, the unions, Megan. In the past, some of the managers have just said, let's just go to arbitration, skip all this. This is a nice, refreshing thing to be able to work between our staff and our unions. And I hope it does not stop here. I hope it continues on any issues to be able to go back and forth. This is a big step, I think, for all the unions and for the board also. Thank you.
Well said.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Approved.
Next, motion to approve the installation and location of a monitoring well on Easton Road. Pat, would you mind?
Sure.
Second.
Oh, thank you.
So at the Strip Shopping Center behind the Township Building Complex, there was a dry cleaning service there, and water monitoring is required now since that service has been in place. The water is going to travel down the hill from their location through our property. They've been before the Board of Commissioners before to ask for one well, which the board has approved, though we've shifted the location of that well. It's going to be along Easton Road, somewhere near the bus stop. They wanted it more near the corner. We moved that away because of what may be happening at the Township Complex. They've since come back and asked to put in a second well. And I think the difference is one well is going to be at one depth, another well is going to be at a separate depth. And they have a location identified on that as well, though we haven't given them, yes, that's the exact location. What we're asking for now is to approve the second well at the location to be determined by staff. That best suits their need and our needs moving forward. They're responsible for the installation of the well, the monitoring well, the maintenance of the well, and ultimately the removal of the well at such a time to be decided, which I don't think we have that stated in the request at this point.
No, there's no set time frame stated in the contract. That was the only kind of odd thing about it, but you are also fully indemnified and insured against this. Just remember this all for the new commissioner's benefit. This came about a couple of years ago because the DEP actually has cited that former dry cleaner for this. So they're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They are legally required to comply with DEP cleanup rules and test all the neighboring properties.
Knowing the owners, they can't sell the properties.
Correct. So they have to clean it up, they have to satisfy the violation, and if anything comes out of this monitoring on the township's property, they're 100% responsible for remediating the soil as well.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion from the board? Any discussion from the general public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against, abstain, so moved.
That concludes the business of Finance and Administration Committee.
Now that sure I got my computer up and running again from the battery. Parks and Recreation.
Parks and Recreation has no items for discussion tonight.
Okay. Any comments in general from any of the commissioners? Okay, with that, we're adjourned.